Hello, everyone. Josh, we're live.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining in today's session. Today's session will be on data warehousing and building scalable data solutions with Microsoft Fabric's data warehouse. I'm joined in today by Charles. Hi, Charles. Yeah. Thanks, Charles. So Charles will be taking us through today's session. As a reminder, this is the third session of the Microsoft Data Plus AI Kenya Hack, and this session will be focusing primarily on data warehouses in Microsoft Fabric. So over to you, Charles.
Thank you. Let's get started. Okay, so number one, thank you all for having me. I'm a principal PM manager lead for the Fabric Data Warehouse. I'm going to talk to you folks about all the new capabilities that we've been delivering and hopefully provide some inspiration for what you can do during the hack. Let's talk a little bit about data warehousing. We really built the data warehousing capabilities in Fabric as a pinnacle of what makes Fabric Fabric. So we have data integration, data engineering, data science capabilities, Power BI, of course. But we've also got capabilities for data warehousing, and specifically, all those capabilities are underpinned by Copilot, OneLake, and of course, Purview for governance, which just means that your data is your data, it's accessible, and it's always governed. Now, when we think about the Fabric Data Warehouse engine, this is really what powers all of the clicky, draggy, droppy, and powerful analytics experiences. And this is just the type of thing that you need in the era of AI. So you've got a relational, serverless, always on, infinitely scalable compute engine. And then, of course, you've got all of your data in your OneLake instance. And this just means that as you are adding additional data, we add the additional compute you need to analyze your data at scale. And we're using AI to help with query optimization, query performance, and of course, all the different analytical experiences that you need to do your job and analyze data as quickly as possible. Now, behind the scenes of the Fabric Data Warehouse, there are a number of core building blocks. The first are simplified developer experiences. So think capabilities for any scalable developer, whether you use no code or pro code, or you want to use a mix of both modalities. We have those capabilities built in. The next is just making sure that as you add additional data, we've done it in a way where if you have structured data, semi-structured data, and you land it in the lake, the analytical capabilities of our SQL engine can work across that to give you capabilities like stored procedures, functions, and of course, views, tables, and all the analytical SQL needs that you might require. Now, because this is built for the modern age, we also have a fully serverless and on-demand compute, which means that as you add additional petabytes and petabytes of data, we've always got you covered. And this is built into all the applications that you use today, whether it's Excel, whether it's PowerPoint, even things like Power BI. It's one click away to get all of that additional clicky, draggy, droppy that you need in a format that helps you tell a story with data, make decisions with data, and even draw insights, conclusions, and of course, drive actions from that data. Now, because we're Microsoft, we're also giving this to you in an enterprise-ready platform. And we've been building on these AI investments that we've made in SQL Server and in Synapse and in Power BI and now Fabric from the very beginning. So you're going to get amazing query performance. You're going to get the right type of developer experiences. Think Copilot, but on steroids. And of course, at the query optimization and query processing, and even the storage layer, we've got AI innovations there to make sure that you don't have to do a lot of work, but you get the magical simplicity of analytics at scale. Now, we know that there are a lot of organizations thinking about the medallion architecture pattern. And this fundamentally is not new, but it's a great way to think about how you can land data across various stages and get the type of analytics experiences that you need. So think about capabilities where you land data first in the lake, and then you can use simple things like SQL stored procedures to move data across your bronze, your silver, or your gold layers. And all that data still stands in the lake, but you've refined it. And then because it's in the lake, that also allows other compute engines, think Spark, right? Think DuckDB, think any new thing that might exist, as well as existing capabilities like Power BI can read from those various layers, and there's nothing else you need to do. So with these types of patterns, you can unlock reporting, querying, apps, and even data science out of the box. And this is very important, right? As medallion architecture, as the era of AI continues to push on scalable architecture patterns, you can know that you're right at home with the skills you already have in SQL with a Fabric data warehouse. Now, we know that some customers are saying, well, why do I need a data warehouse in the modern age? And what I would tell you is, hey, there are a lot of reasons why SQL is a winning capability, whether you're using things like dbt or Click or Tableau, or whether you need game-changing security. Think about things like row-level security, dynamic data masking, grants, denies, revokes, object-level security, column-level security, views. These are things that exist in databases for a very long time, and they're security fundamentals. You don't have to worry about installing special catalogs or working really, really hard and diligently with workarounds and functions to get these same types of capabilities. They're just built into the Fabric warehouse because we know security is super important. Now, this just leans in on your skills that you have today. SQL is the most used lingua franca of analytics. So that's a couple of reasons of why these are some of the reasons why customers choose the data warehouse. And if I move on, I just want you to know that we ship every day. So this is a small snapshot of all the capabilities we've shipped. And I want you to know that we're also looking at your ideas. So when it comes to your ideas, we just continue to ship. Let's take a look at what this really looks like just to get you inspired.
Here I am in my Contoso Sales Analytics workspace, and in this task flow, you can see we've built a full end-to-end solution here in Fabric. It has everything from data ingestion, to our data stores, to machine learning and AI, to data visualization, and even real-time alerting and dashboards. Now I need to make some updates to our solution, and I'm going to show you how I can use Copilot everywhere across Fabric to be more productive. But first, I'm going to use the built-in Git integration in Fabric. The Git integration in Fabric is now GA, and we also have new support for items from the real-time intelligence workload. So I'm going to create a new branch workspace to do my work. I just give it a name, and automatically Fabric will create a new workspace and branch and sync it with my Git repo. So I can make all of my updates and verify my changes without disrupting my current solution. In a few moments, all of the supported workspace items have been added to the new workspace. Now, what I want to do is update the data warehouse we're using for our customer loyalty program to include data about the orders our members are making. To do this, I'm going to create a new data pipeline. Let's give the pipeline a name, and I'm ready to go. Now, instead of manually creating the pipeline activities, I'm going to use the new Copilot for data pipelines that is now in public preview. With this Copilot, I can use natural language to simply tell Copilot what I need done. In this case, I want to copy the orders table, and I can select the connection I want to use from the built-in UX and tell it to put the data into a new table in my data warehouse. I also want to get an email if the pipeline fails. So I send this to Copilot in the chat, and just like that, Copilot has created the pipeline activities I need. And now I can run the pipeline and start moving the data over. Using natural language to configure my pipeline is much faster than using UX. And if I give the data some time to load, I can switch back to my data warehouse and refresh it and see my new table. And the new Copilot for data pipelines can do a few other cool things as well. If I switch over to the monitoring hub and select a different pipeline activity that has a failure, such as this Databricks data load, I can ask Copilot to help me understand what's going on with the error. Copilot will look at the error codes for me, so I don't have to go searching on my own, and help me understand what's going on. In this case, it looks like there might be a quota issue that's causing a problem, and Copilot has given me a few links where I can learn more. Okay, so let's switch back to my warehouse. Now, I'm going to use Copilot in data warehousing, which is also now in public preview. Let's start by asking Copilot to recommend some queries I might want to run. And here, Copilot has looked at my data and made some query suggestions. Let's look at the top 3 primary interests of customers who have backordered items, which I can now ask because we've brought in the additional orders table. And I can run the query and see the result. It looks like camping is the area with the most back orders. Now let's ask Copilot to create a bit more complicated query. Let's ask for a view of customers who have back-ordered orders, their lifetime value, how many back orders they have, and group it by their primary interests. And Copilot has generated the query, which I can run and create the view. Being able to use Copilot to generate SQL is not only a huge productivity boost, but it's also great for helping people upskill and learn to take on more challenging tasks. All right, Next, let's create a new report, which I can do right from my data warehouse using Power BI's direct lake mode. Again, with Copilot, I can simply ask for what I want, such as a breakdown of customer lifetime value and back orders. And in a couple of seconds, Copilot has generated a report page, and it's a great starting point for building out a full report on my data.
All right, so that's a quick overview of some of the capabilities in the Fabric Data Warehouse and how it's integrated with everything from data integration to SQL and Copilot to even things like Power BI right out of the box. Let's take a quick
Here I am in
jump into a little bit deeper dive of Copilot.
Hello. Today I am excited to show you all about Copilot for Data Warehouse. What is Copilot? It's the ultimate paired programmer and productivity booster for any skill level developer, from SQL developers to the business analyst. In this demo, I will show you how easy it is to build a warehouse schema, ingest some data, and start querying said data within a matter of minutes, all using Copilot. Let's dive right in. To start, I'm in the warehouse editor. My warehouse is currently empty, as you can see, with no tables or objects currently present. I see a Copilot button in the ribbon. Let's see if it can help me out. I asked it to create me a table called geography, and I specify some column names. In just a second, Copilot was able to return me a SQL query to create a table called geography. Let's insert it into my query tab. As you can see, Copilot not only gave me T-SQL code, but it also gave me a step-by-step plan on how it came up with it too, helping me understand its thought process. Let's run the query. Now that the query is finished running, I can see that a table called geography has been created in my warehouse, and it even has the column names that I specified, without having to write a single line of code, all thanks to Copilot. I repeat the process, and I get a Copilot-generated script for the rest of the tables that I want to create. I run the script, and now the rest of my schema has been created. So I'm ready to start ingesting data. But how? Let's ask Copilot. I simply ask Copilot how to ingest data into the warehouse, and it tells me all the different options I have. I see that copy into is one of the supported ingestion methods, and I want to use it. Let's see if Copilot can help. I open a new query tab and start to write a comment in my query editor, asking Copilot to generate a copy into script. I provide a generalized blob storage endpoint that it needs to pick up from, and it automatically recognizes the table name variable and creates copy into scripts for each and every one of my tables. I decide to accept a Copilot suggestion with the quick tab, and I run the script. And ta-da! All of my tables are now populated with data. Now that my data is ready, it's time to start querying it to uncover some insights. But I'm not even sure where to start. Let's ask Copilot. I see a suggestion from Copilot to find some cool trends in my data. I decide to click the prompt and see what it comes up with. In just a second, Copilot suggests me different data points and trends to start analyzing. I notice that the topic it suggests to me are personalized to the schema of my warehouse. I select a topic that I'm interested in, and I decide to ask it that question. I click Ask, and within just a couple of seconds, Copilot generates a SQL query for me. I simply insert this query into my query editor, and I can run it. Now, I am able to see all the average trip distances per each city. Now, I want to write some queries of my own to start analyzing my data further. I write a query to retrieve the highest temperature per each city. I try to run it, but I'm met with an error. I can't figure out how to fix it, but I see an option to fix my query errors using Copilot. I click this button, and Copilot automatically fixes my query. I try to run it now, and my query works perfectly. I switch to another query that I have written. To make the query reusable for others, I want to leave comments in my code, but it takes up too much of my time. I see an option to explain my query using Copilot, so I click it. And Copilot automatically leaves inline code comments throughout my code so that others can pick up right where I left off. This is just scratching the surface of what is possible with Copilot. In this demo, I showed how you can use Copilot to create a warehouse schema, ingest data, query that data, and even explain and fix my handmade queries. Copilot is a SQL developer's best friend and will transform the way you work with data warehouses going forward. Thank you.
All right, so now we've seen how easy Copilot makes developing, and you can see how beautiful it is when you have a paired programmer, a Sherpa, AI to help you do your job just a little bit better. Now we have other developer experience improvements, but I want to check in first with you, Josh, and just make sure that as we're continuing to talk about this, we have the right level of inspiration. What do you think? Should we dive deeper into developer experience improvements? Should we talk a little bit more about notebooks? Like, what do you think? Let's see.
Just something to allow folks who are already building their projects for the hackathon, maybe get some hands-on skills on the whole developer experiences, leveraging the data warehousing and the notebooks inside of Fabric.
Okay. So I'm hearing from Paul, bring on the notebooks. I'm hearing from Andres, what about stored procedures? There's a lot of different things here. So maybe what I'll do is I'll start again with some of the developer experiences, and then we can talk a little bit about notebooks at the very end. And that way we can kind of get the right level of inspiration. I think for everyone listening, the thing we want you to know is that the Fabric Data Warehouse is very easy to get started with, and you can do very sophisticated stuff no matter what type of skill level developer you are. So whether you're a no-code developer, a pro-code developer, if you want to work with API connections, if you want to work with service principles, you can do it all. So let's take a look. I'm going to share my screen again. And you're going to see a little inception here, folks. And we're going to go back. We're going to talk about some of the developer experience improvements. And for some of you developers, this is going to look pretty familiar. This is hopscotch. We're using APIs. We're using specifically service principles. And we are starting by thinking about how can we automate a warehouse workflow. And specifically, we're going to use service principles to do that. Let's take a look.
Hi. Today, I am excited to show you the latest developer experience updates within the Fabric Warehouse Query Editor. Jumping right in, let's create a warehouse with some new APIs and improvements that we have recently introduced. To start, I can now create a warehouse with default case-insensitive correlation. In addition, Warehouse now supports service principal authentication. This means that whether I'm using CRUD public APIs, automating deployments, or simply sharing my warehouse, I can take advantage of service principles in my organization as a supported authentication method. I submit the API request and navigate back to the workspace. Upon entering my workspace, I can clearly see the new warehouse and the owner set as the service principal. I have loaded some data into my newly created warehouse. I need to make sure that my tables and columns have landed properly from my ETL processes. First, I want to validate that my primary and foreign key constraint columns are defined on the correct tables. I see that there's new functionality available in my Object Explorer to go and search, so I give it a shot. I try searching for data, and I instantly see results of the location of the column and its respective tables. The OE also now supports filtering by object type, so I can easily locate any object of my choice. We know that most warehouse users have multiple schemas with tons and tons of objects within. With these new updates, locating objects and queries has never been easier. Now that I have validated that my columns exist in the desired tables, let's check on the data. I start writing a simple query to retrieve the row count of my table. Upon writing my query, I see that I am instantly met with a tooltip which shows me how to use the function and even provides me multiple examples on how to include the syntax in my query. I write the rest of my query according to the example, and I see that IntelliSense not only tries to complete the rest of my word, but it also tells me the object's information, like schema, type, and column, which is super helpful for me to validate that I'm querying the correct data. Last but not least, I can also take advantage of the new command palette available in my query editor, which introduces support for tons of keyboard commands and shortcuts so I can continue coding with the same predicates and functionality that I've come to love in my VS Code experiences. I notice that formatting my document is an available action and try to use it. My query is automatically reformatted to make it readable and easily consumable. I run my query now, and validate that my data has been loaded properly. So now, my teammates and I are ready to start analyzing data. As my teammates start using the warehouse, I want to make sure that I'm monitoring our usage correctly so that we don't exceed the capacity. I see a new Copilot button in the ribbon. Let's see if it can help me out. I ask Copilot how to monitor my queries, and it comes back with a plethora of options that I have available to me. I decide to take it one step further and ask it to help me find my longest running queries. Within just a second, it returns me a query using the query insight views available in the warehouse. I simply insert this query in my query editor, and I can run the query. As I dive deeper into the usage, I also want to see if there are any queries that might have been poorly written and can be optimized. I ask Copilot to help me find queries that perform poorly so that I can identify them. And voila, it comes up with a personalized query to help me find which queries I need to go and fix. As I continue my warehouse analysis, I notice that there's a new entry point directly in my query editor to further develop my database in my favorite client tools like SSMS and VS Code. I can simply click this button to launch the application and connect to my warehouse with my details pre-filled. And in just one click, I'm already ready to go with minimal disruption to my workflow. To summarize, we are super excited to deliver the newest round of developer experience updates to the Fabric Warehouse, which includes support for brand new APIs with service principal support, syntax highlighting and IntelliSense experiences, Copilot chat with monitoring integration, open and client tooling functionality, and much more. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
All right, so we looked at that, and now let's just look at SQL Notebooks. And what I love about SQL Notebooks is you saw earlier how the data warehouse sits on top of one lake. What that means is as you're developing and you're using SQL Notebooks, you can easily switch between different languages like Python, but also compute engines like Spark, and you continue to develop on that same set of data, which is super powerful. Let's take a look at what those SQL Notebooks look like in the warehouse.
Hello everyone, I'm excited to demonstrate how you can use the Fabric Notebook experience to develop a warehouse and analyze data. I have already created and ingested data into this warehouse that I want to query. But instead of querying the data from the query editor, I'm going to use the brand new experience that allows developers to explore, analyze, collaborate, and operationalize using SQL Notebooks. First, from the Fabric Data Warehouse Editor ribbon, I can start creating a notebook that carries the warehouse context into the new notebook. Alternatively, I can create a new notebook from the Fabric Warehouse Home Hub or the Create Hub. Within a few seconds, the notebook is created and I can see that the warehouse objects in the Explorer. The pin icon indicates that this is the primary warehouse and the connection is established with it. All my queries will run on this connection. The default language selected in the ribbon is T-SQL. That's right, it's T-SQL. We are bringing the power of notebooks to all our SQL developers. To explore the data, I can use quick actions like select top 100 on the table. For the purpose of this demo, I will switch to an existing notebook. The notebook experience allows me to organize my analysis into separate code cells with the documentation maintained in Markdown cells. Each code cell shows the T-SQL language selection in the bottom right corner. The code cells are embedded with rich T-SQL intelligence to help write queries. When I run a code cell, I can see messages, results, and additional consumable actions on the results. The inspect view provides the quick stats on each column in the returned result set. For example, on total sales column, mean, max, range, the number of missing, unique, invalid values are showcased. I can plot results as charts and customize it too. By selecting the different chart type and plotting total profits along with the total sales, I can see each city's performance. I have seen many of my analysts are interested in this result, and to make it easier, let me quickly create a view. It's as easy as selecting the query, clicking the Save as View menu from the Cell toolbar, and providing the name for the view in the dialog. That's it. The view is ready for further consumption. Similarly, I can save the results of the query into the table using the Save As Table menu. By simply selecting the schemas and providing the table name, I can load results into a table using CTAS command. Additionally, I can download results as CSV, JSON, or XML file, or download charts as JPEG, PNG, or SVG files. For my next analysis, I need to perform some cross-warehouse queries. Adding additional warehouses is so easy. All I have to do is just click on this button, choose Marketing SQL Analytics endpoint from the OneLake Data Hub, and it's loaded into the Explorer. Now let's write this cross-database query. I can write queries with a three-part naming convention to refer to objects from the respective warehouse or SQL Analytics endpoint. Now that my analysis on contours of sales data is done, I want another developer to verify this analysis. All I have to do is to add a comment in my notebook asking my colleague for review. Notebook provides a great collaboration feature using an Office-like easy-to-use experience. Finally, Notebook can make it so easy to separate the code from the actual data and share the notebook with my leaders by clicking the share button and selecting the additional permissions for usage. In summary, we saw SQL developers can take advantage of the power of notebooks and analyze, visualize, collaborate, and share their analysis. We are excited to announce that T-SQL notebooks are in public preview. Thank you.
All right. So now you've seen a really quick and powerful demo of all the different capabilities that exist for developers. So hopefully this is generating a ton of excitement for you as you think about different ways to create new analytics value and impress through the hackathon. Josh, any other things you think we should show?
Do we have Git support for data warehousing and for the notebook supports that you just showed?
We sure do. We sure do. I'm happy to showcase that. I also showed it at the very beginning. You saw that initial demo and you saw that source control. Everything inside of Fabric has the Git capabilities. So all you need to do is you go to any workspace, you click on the source control button, and you can add your Git provider. And then what happens is all of those different capabilities are synced very easily so that, where you're working in your master or your feature branches, it's really, really seamless to continue to use the web UI or your favorite tools like SSDT, VS Code, or even SSMS.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't think we have any further questions coming in from the audience. Someone had mentioned, I think we've already covered the notebooks.
Mm-hmm.
The other question I had seen was around API connections.
Yep.
And I don't know whether you're able to also provide some info around the same.
Yeah, you can definitely work with APIs. There's a couple of different ways you can work with them. The first way is through Data Factory. So I'm happy to give a little quick demo and showcase how that's possible. But you can use Data Factory through either data flows, or you can use Data Factory through pipelines to interrogate and work with APIs. Let's take a look. I'm happy to just do a live demo.
Awesome.
So let me share my screen. And I'm going to present. I'm going to share my screen. And again, you might see a little bit of inception here, folks, but I promise it's okay. So I'm going to click on share and screen. And now I'm in Fabric. And what I've done, if I just exit out of this, so I'm in Fabric. I'm going to create a new workspace just to demo these capabilities. I'm going to call it Hackathon March 25. I'm going to click on apply. Now, when I do that, I've now created a brand new workspace. There's a number of different ways that I can interact and work with my data. The first way that I can do that is that I can create a task flow. And I love these task flows because if you're trying to figure out how you get started working in Fabric, it's a real breeze. You can simply select one of these different pre-designed task flows or even upload your own. But for this, I'm going to actually just choose this basic data analytics one. And what we're going to do is we're going to help you recommend and leverage all the right types of capabilities for the different types of patterns and analytical needs that you have. So the first thing I need to do is I need to collect data. And for this, you're going to see I have a couple different options. we're going to first click on the data flow Gen 2 because there's some really powerful stuff here I want to show you folks. So I'm going to click on data flow Gen 2. It's going to create one on the fly. I'm going to call this one no code ETL. And you can see Git integration, all these other capabilities are things I can easily enable. Now on the fly, what we're doing is we're spinning up the same engine that you might be used to using things like Power BI or BizApps, Dynamics, or even Excel. The same Power Query engine has been grown up inside of Fabric, so it's enterprise ready. And what that means is all those different capabilities that you would expect for being able to analyze all of your data are now available. So I'm going to pause here. Look at all these sources, everything from files to databases to, of course, the things in Fabric, but things in the Power Platform as well, things in Azure, and of course, online services. So this also means that this extends to things like web APIs. And I know there's a question about how easy is it to connect to like web APIs, but it's as simple as clicking on this and then signing into that website. And you can see here, right over the API, we can work with those JSON requests and interrogate them super easy. But what I love is that with the power of Power Query, you can see all these connectors that are available for you. So this extends also, if I close this, this extends also to all the different transformations that we have. And we have hundreds of transformations to allow you to do all these kinds of capabilities, no code or pro code. But I'm going to go back to the workspace. And you can see that this data flow is already created. Now, the next way that I potentially could work with APIs is through notebooks. I could work with them through user data functions. I could work with them through Spark jobs or even data pipelines. I can also use Python notebooks, event streams, but let's just create a pipeline. I'm going to show you this experience too, folks, because it's super easy to get started working with your data of any type. And then I'll go to the data warehouse and show you some more goodies. So you can see here, we have a number of different ways to work with our data. And you can see that I've also got Copilot, but I've got activities. I can work with metadata, variables, and of course, web sources. So what I love about this is I can start working with web activities, interacting with them very easily. I can invoke pipelines. I have other activities that I can do. There are so many different capabilities inside of a pipeline. You can really think about this as the orchestrator, the engine for some of your additional capabilities across all of your ETL needs. You can run jobs, you can schedule them, you can trigger them. It's super powerful. But let's go back to the workspace again. So you've seen two different ways I can interact and collect my data, work with those APIs. I can also use those notebooks, which you showed you earlier. So the last thing I will do is I'll go back here and I will just showcase the Python notebook. And again, folks, I'm showing this just to make sure you understand there's so many ways to work with your data, no matter what type it is. We work with all these different types of heterogeneous sources, whether it's structured, semi-structured, unstructured, super, super powerful. So I'm going to skip this tour here, but this is kind of the last way that you could work with notebooks, or work with APIs or data. So you can just use Python, and we give you powerful compute behind the scenes to make sure that that's a breeze. So we've kind of talked about three different ways. You see how easy it is to create those things. But the next thing I can do is I can store the data. We've been talking about a warehouse. So why don't we just create a warehouse here on the fly? So when I create and I click on this warehouse, I give it a name, right? I'm just going to call it warehouse. And what I love about this capabilities is, again, it's all serverless. It's easy to create. It takes literally seconds. And now you're seeing not only is this warehouse getting spun up, but all those different options that I showed you earlier for things like ETL are also available. So we talked a little bit about, data flows. We talked a little bit about pipelines. You can see that both of those experiences are already unified. But you can also see that when it comes to creating queries, I can easily do that. We've got templates, and then we've got additional capabilities. So let's take a look. And let's first just say, you know what? I want to create a simple table, right? Create a table of, let's call it, countries. And populate it. And so now I'm going to say, I'm going to start typing, create table. And then you can see here, this Copilot completion is working, right? As I say, countries, right? You can start to see that the Copilot is going to start working and trying to add the additional things that I want to do. I love this functionality just because you can see how easy it is for it to complete my code. So now it already created this, right? And what's nice about that is I've got the first part of this created for me. Pretty rad. Now the next thing I might want to do is I might want to, insert data into the countries table. And so I could say insert into, and you can see here, voila. Now I've actually populated this with some very basic values. So I click on this and I click run. I actually didn't select the right thing, but we can easily do that. So I'm going to just select this bit here. I'm going to click on run. And you can see it's running that query for me. It's going to insert some data for me. And now it can go back. You can see the Object Explorer is updating. And what I will now be able to do, I'm going to refresh my browser really quick. I'll now have my data actually populated for me for that country's table. So pretty powerful stuff. And I haven't really wrote a line of code yet. So now I'm in the data warehouse, right? You can see that I have this initial query that I ran. And now the next thing I might want to do is I might want to select star from countries, right? And what's cool about this is I got to spell it right. But you can start to see that, as I've built out a data warehouse, there's a number of capabilities for me. It's easy to write SQL queries, but we can continue going forward. The next thing I might want to do, if I go back to my workspace, is, I might want to create visualizations. And one of the things we told you folks is that, hey, Power BI is just built in. Power BI can work not only on top of my data warehouse. So if I go back to that data warehouse, I have this reporting capabilities, and I can actually create a new report or manage the default semantic model right there. But if I want to create a custom report, all I have to do is create and say I want a new report very easily, and I can do that. And I can select the different sources that might already exist. So I could select this data warehouse. I can auto create a report. I could also select anything else that's available to me inside of Fabric to easily auto create or create a custom report on the fly. I love this functionality too, just because when it comes to making this a breeze, life becomes very, very easy across your kind of analytical needs. So I love this functionality. It makes it easy to analyze my data. But the last thing you can do is you can start to track your data. And this is where you can do things like the activator. Now, the activator is useful for things like when I have a system and I want to start to detect anomalies or detect trends, I can use this activator to actually integrate with the data sources that I already use and trigger insights and alerts and do other things downstream. So if I just click on the sample, again, folks, we're in the hackathon. We saw how easy it is to collect data, to store data, to use the data warehouse. We can even create visualizations and track data. We're looking at tracking data now. So you can see here, there is a very easy way to start to explore what Data Activator can do. We've got this sample here. You can see how easy it is to start monitoring all this information, all these different sources. And I can start to see not only all those attributes, but I can actually start this. And then I can do things like, hey, on the basis of a test action, right, create a rule, save and update this rule. And I can say, hey, I want to create a Teams message or do other things, right? You can see I can send emails, create different actions. I can also create a custom action. And again, super extensible. So when you think about like all the scenarios and things you might want to do, it's very easy to get started, create different bits of analytics value, piece together scenarios all inside of Fabric. And just to summarize, we saw how easy it is to collect data, store data, even create visualizations, to clicky, draggy, droppy, and then go into tracking data seamlessly, all in the same kind of task flow in Fabric. So it's a really quick demo. I'm going to stop sharing and kill this inception. But Josh, Paul, any other questions, things we should showcase?
In which you can bring in data. You showcase the pipelines. We can use the notebooks. We can use the data flows. But what if I've already loaded my data in a Lakehouse, or maybe I've already created shortcuts to another cloud provider. Like maybe I had my data in AWS or in GCP, and I've already created shortcuts to that. Can I be able to leverage the same data in my data warehouse?
Yep. Let me give you a quick demo of that too. So I'm going to share my screen again, and let's go back to just my entire screen. So here we are back in this workspace, and I'm gonna go back to that warehouse, and I ran that query. You can see that I've got some tables here. The next question you might have is like, what happens if I'm maybe in another workspace? I want to access this data from this data warehouse. So I'm gonna create a new workspace here on the fly. I'm gonna go back to the home. You can see inside of Power BI, right? You can always access your Fabric items. But if you want to work inside the Fabric experience, which is dedicated for kind of like your developer needs, I can easily do that too. I'm gonna create a new workspace. I'm gonna call it Hackathon 25 Demo 2, or we'll just call it second workspace. So imagine I'm in a different region or department. I could also say that I want to make sure that this exists in different areas, different regions as well. So I might be across the world, right? I might be working with someone in Kenya, and I'm here in the US. I might be working with someone in Australia, and I might be in the UK. Workspaces give you the flexibility to work across those different types of requirements. So I've created the second workspace, and you can see it's blank, it's empty. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, again, choose a pre-designed task flow. The reason I'm doing that is because in Fabric, we have essentially all the compute engines, all the different types of databases, data engineering, data ingestion, capabilities that you might need to do analytics at scale. It's a complete data platform. But if I just show you the plus new item, you're going to see all the different capabilities that exist for creation. So gone are the days of using a console or a portal. You can really develop all the things you need for analytics right here. So just to demonstrate that, I'm going to find the Lakehouse. I'm going to create one because Josh was saying, hey, what does it look like to use a Lakehouse? I'm going to create this Lakehouse. I'm going to call it, Josh Lakehouse.
And Charles,
yep.
As you're creating this, another question just came in. Like, can you explain the difference between a Lakehouse and a data warehouse as well?
Yeah, totally. So whether you're using a Lakehouse or a warehouse, you're always using the power of OneLake and the power of some of the analytical engines that we have. In a Lakehouse, we really built it for semi-structured, unstructured, and even some structured data. And the primary persona we were targeting here is someone who is working with the Spark capabilities. So think about being able to leverage, Python, Scala, R, and use notebooks as the main facility to do so. But because it's Fabric, we also have no-code experiences. And I'm going to show you that here. Now, because, a Lakehouse, you're working with this data that's unstructured or semi-structured or structured, we know that you might have these analytical downstream needs. So we give you things like semantic models. We also give you the ability to work with a SQL Analytics endpoint. Now you can think about the SQL Analytics endpoint as a serverless, read-only version of the data warehousing capabilities. So when you have needs that are exploratory, when you have needs where you've processed a lot of your data in Spark, and now you want to serve it in SQL, that is a great scenario where the Lakehouse makes a ton of sense. It's got some of the data warehousing capabilities you might need. And if you're doing a lot of your processing in Spark, there's no compromises. Now, because underneath the Lakehouse, there's just one lake, I'm going to now talk about the data warehousing capabilities. Now say my favorite language is SQL, and I'm coming from the SQL Server world. I get the same value prop of having all my data stored in open formats in the lake, but now I can use my primary language of SQL to develop. So now I can think about, hey, I can use notebooks, but I can use SQL. I can use a SQL editor. I can use SSMS. I can use VS Code. But again, pure T-SQL. So for SQL Server lovers out there, for folks that are thinking about simplicity, the data warehouse allows you to get all the benefits of things like open table formats, but you have to worry about making sure you maintain those tables. You're doing all that data engineering work. It just works out of the box, giving you those same kind of premises, but it's really focused on SQL. So those are really the two different kind of dichotomies that we have. The best part about Fabric is that they're really just made for whatever skill level you're coming to the table with. So if you're coming from using SQL Server, congratulations, you've been modernized using the warehouse in Fabric. If you're coming from using Spark open source, congratulations, we've got a faster version of Spark open source, and you can use our Lakehouse experiences to work with your data no matter where it lives. So let's take a look at shortcuts. Josh had asked me, hey, how do I get access to that data across other areas? And with a shortcut, I can work with data inside of OneLake, right? So this is literally any compute engine. I talked about how a warehouse is built on OneLake, so get all the promises of an open table format with the power of T-SQL. But I can also work with Amazon S3, any S3 compatible file format, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, Dataverse, Google Cloud Storage. Really, like, the possibilities are endless. And you can work across private links, right? Private endpoints. But of course, also we can use gateways for data that's on premises. So that's where this S3 compatible storage comes in handy. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to go find that warehouse one that I created earlier. And I'm going to create a shortcut to it. And what we're doing here is we are actually creating a symbolic link, a virtual pointer to that data, but we're not moving the data because it always exists in OneLake. What we can do is we can work even across regions to do that. So what I'm going to do is, you can see here, I've got tables in DBO, right? I actually only have one table. You saw me create this earlier. And you can see all the metadata behind that, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this countries, right, table here. I'm going to click on next. And I'm going to click on create. And what you're going to see is the wizard's going to do its magic. And you're going to see now, right, there is a shortcut here, a schema called countries. And you're going to see my Delta table. You know it's a table because I have this little table icon and a triangle next to it. And as this loads, right, now that means that I can start to analyze that data across other areas. So super powerful stuff. But let's look and see what it looks like to add just a few more shortcuts. So you can see all my data is organized in a schema, but I can continue to use the shortcut wizard to add more data. So I'm going to go back. And now I'm going to go get some data from a couple other areas, right? So I want this, sample DW, right, as well. So I'm going to click on next. I'm going to see all the tables that exist inside of there, right? I'm going to load that data, right? And we're going to go forward. Now, what's cool is you can see that I already had a schema called DBO. It's going to already know how to handle when I have these collisions between the names. It's going to append it with a suffix. That's fantastic. I'll be able to analyze and look through my data and see some of the other things that are there. Now, some people were asking, like, hey, I got a warehouse, I got a lake house. How do they work really well together? Let me kind of show you what that looks like. So that, inside of any lake house, you also have a SQL Analytics endpoint. A SQL Analytics endpoint is really for that serving across these different experiences. So when I click on this, what I'm going to be able to do is analyze my data in a T-SQL format. And this is going to be super powerful. So now we're loading that SQL Analytics endpoint. And all this is going to allow me to do is just query that same data that I shortcut before. And you can see that initial lake view right here. And you can also see the SQL view that we were looking at earlier. Now, if I go to the workspace, you're also going to see, right, not any other artifacts, but what we just talked about. You're going to see the SQL Analytics endpoint, right? You're going to see the Lakehouse. And you're going to see this semantic model, which also just makes it easy to do your analytical reporting. So you can enter and work with these experiences a number of ways. You can manage access and give people only certain levels of access. So I could say, hey, Josh, I want him to be a viewer, but I only want him to work with the SQL Analytics endpoint. As we're doing our data engineering and we're using Spark, maybe different libraries, we can do so in the Lakehouse. But once we go to the SQL Analytics endpoint, the whole purpose of this experience, and you can see that I can access it from here, I can access it from there, is to start analyzing my data. And as we start to load and work through that data, I go back to the lake mode to analyze my data. You can see, hey, look, it's loaded. I can start to write a SQL query. I can also preview the data. So when I look here, I can analyze my data through different schemas. You can see tables, views, functions, stores, procedures. I have that initial countries table. And this is super powerful, right? I didn't create this here in Josh's Lakehouse. You saw me create that earlier, but now I can simply click on this table and I can get a data preview of that data that we inserted using Copilot. So what I like about this functionality is it's pretty easy to start to virtualize your tables, your information, but I can also look across other tables that I created. So you know that I have this DBO table here, and I have this taxi information. I can also click on that taxi information, and I can also write queries. So this is a full kind of SQL experience. You can see I can run, visualize my data, go from there. Makes this very easy, but this is just data warehousing experiences all connected through the same types of ways that you would expect. But now I'm using Lakehouse to work with that same data.
So basically, I have the same UI that I had when working with a data warehouse when I'm in the SQL endpoint mode.
Yep. In SQL endpoint mode, this is just really a read-only version of the data on the lake. So I have a lot of the same types of capabilities. I can read data, I can create views. I can't manipulate data. I only manipulate data inside of that lake mode. So I'm processing my data with Spark. I'm creating those tables, and I might be refining it in, like, say, my gold layer using the SQL endpoint. So now I've kind of mixed compute engines and languages, and it's all super seamless here. The alternative is, of course, to just use a warehouse where it's just SQL through and through. So depending on your requirements and needs, you can mix and match these things. What I love is you can see in this experience, it just says plus warehouses. This allows me to actually work across any SQL endpoint or warehouse in the same space. So suppose I had a warehouse here. If I create a new warehouse, I can start to cross query in the same workspace. And from the warehouse point of view, a SQL Analytics endpoint is just another read-only database in the same logical server, which means that you can mix and match and get all the different types of analytical needs, clicky, draggy, droppy, in a single pane of glass, and not worry about, hey, I chose a lake house first and I want to use a warehouse or vice versa. They're all built on top of one lake. They're all built to interop really well together. And they all store their data in open table format. So it's really just about SQL and using T-SQL and the wide variety of languages and capabilities available to you through the T-SQL capabilities. Or if you want to use Spark, you can use the Lakehouse, and you can use Python, R, Scala, etc. to do your job.
Awesome.
Benefit, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I said that's pretty. That's a good explanation between the Lakehouse and the data warehouse and how you use both of them, for the various needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What else can we demonstrate? Show you. I know my bandwidth is getting a little choppy, but hopefully I'm still coming in okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think as we wrap up, we have one final question coming in, and that's whether there are any particular recommendations when we're working with our data in the data warehouse when dealing with PII information.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing you can always do is you can ask Copilot for help and how you might secure that data. Depending on the nature of PII data, you're going to want to make sure you've governed it, you've secured it, you've classified it. That's one. The second is in the warehouse, we support industry-leading security. So think about row-level security, column-level security, grants, denies, revokes. And then you also support things like, because it's built into Fabric, MFA, conditional access. When I connect inside of Fabric, I have to use my phone. It's always, something that I have and then something that I know. And when I'm working with my computer, it's also, biometrics as well. So, inside of Microsoft, because it's connected inside of Fabric, we give you all these tools to manage and govern your data. But it gets a little even better. One of my favorite things about Fabric is that in the warehouse, all your data is stored inside of one lake. There's a final thing that I can share with you that I think is super powerful. And this is the fact that, Purview and the One Lake catalog can help you achieve a little bit more. So I'm sharing my screen again, and I'm going to go back. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to this workspace, and you can see I've got some of this data here. But we've also got something called the One Lake catalog. And what I love about the One Lake catalog is I can work across my data and find my data, but I also have a concept of governing my data. And this is where I can monitor my data. This is where I have data lineage, impact analysis. I have endorsements and tags. But what I love about this is that this is going to give me, recommended actions, insights. It's going to help me understand data that I need to classify, and it's already integrated with Purview. So you can think about it like this. You can start to secure your data at the lowest level of grain with a warehouse, fantastic. But then you get this end-to-end 360-degree view of all your data, and you can understand, sensitivity labels. So in that scenario where I have PII, on any artifact, what I can do because I can classify this data as well. And you have automatic classification capabilities with Purview. But I could say this is highly confidential data. And inside of Microsoft, we have a couple other labels that we can do. That's super powerful, of course. But if I go back to the OneLake catalog, you can see that it's aware of that data that I've governed, I've classified, and it can help you continue to get this wide-ranging view of your domain. And you can see all these different bits of information, charts and graphs. I can, of course, say I want to view more of these insights. And there's a ton here to make sure that you get this holistic data governance of my whole estate. And we're really just scratching the surface of all the capabilities that exist here. But Josh, I would say at a really fine level of grain, secure your data. We give you all the tools. And you can even ask Copilot for help and advice and guidance. And it's responsible AI, so it'll suggest, and then it will help you do it. The next step is you can take a step further, make sure you've got the right sensitivity labels. And you can take a step above and at the OneLake catalog level, and you can keep going, right? Purview, M365, conditional access, all these things. I know across other capabilities, you have to stitch these kind of capabilities together yourself to get this kind of unattended data governance. And with Microsoft Fabric, what I love about it is it really just kind of works. But it gives you that full deep dive view of everything you need to do to secure your data at scale.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charles. This has been a very insightful session on getting the most out of the data warehouse capability inside of Microsoft Fabric. And thank you everyone else for joining us today on this session. The next session will be on Thursday, where it's going to be about building end-to-end RAG applications inside of Microsoft Fabric using the eventID as your vector database. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you again on Thursday for that live stream. So thank you for joining in, and good luck as you continue working on your hackathon projects. Thank you.